Back. We are Gentlemen United, and you are in the Man Cave. In the show tonight, I'll be talking to Donovan Mckenzie, Damian McGregor, Shaun Davis, and Denley Mcintosh, all members of Gentlemen United, about their men supporting men programs. Given the very alarming stats around the issues that affect men, losing custody of their children in 82% of custody cases, 4 out of 5 suicides, 80% of the homeless, etc., support systems like the ones that Donovan, Damian, Shaun, and Denley have are vital, not just for the men involved, but also for their children. See my show on fatherlessness and the impact on civilization for more on this. Donovan leads an organization called Heart of a Man and was recently interviewed on a local news program in the Toronto, Canada area. Denley raised our awareness of Donovan's interview in his program. I was so moved I reached out to Donovan and Denley to ask them to join us tonight. Trigger warning. If talking about men's issues offends you, I invite you to stop watching right now and go on to the next YouTube clip. Okay, with that out the way, let's go on. As always, for those watching this broadcast live on YouTube, feel free to add your comments and questions in the comment bar. I'll watch for them throughout the show and will incorporate them into the show, time permitting. Joining us tonight are Donovan, Damian, Shaun, and Denley, and of course you, our viewers. I'm Shaun Best, and I'm your host and moderator. So we'll do a quick roundtable. So Damian, quick introduction of yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, my name is Damian McGregor. I'm part of Heart of the Man. It's been a great journey of just becoming more vulnerable and just doing music and following my passion and following my heart. So it's a very amazing journey, struggles, but still here.
Glad you're still here, brother. Denley.
Yeah, my name is Denley Washington McIntosh, and I always say throw my middle name in there because the only time I get to use is probably in an obituary, and I would hate to use my for my middle name for people to know it then. Yeah, for me, men issues is something that's been dear to my heart. Boys, 6 and now 8.5 months, and what I do now in terms of supporting men. Theologian that try to bring that understanding within the Black community. So I am a pastor, but work with just men in general, just to empower them, encourage them, and hopefully we'll have those sort of in-depth conversations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Donovan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Donovan Mckenzie. Well, normally I tell a full long story, but I'm not going to do that. But 2 years ago, I woke up and I was struggling with depression, and I knew I had a purpose, and my heart was going through a lot of pain. So God spoke to me and told me I should start something called Heart of a Man. Okay, and for that, we're redefining masculinity and manhood and empowering men to speak from their hearts so they can overcome depression, suicide, speak openly about what's going on in their hearts. That's Donovan Mckenzie, and that's the movement. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. We're glad to have you here, Donovan. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And Shaun Davis.
Yes. Yeah. As you said, my name is Shaun Davis. I am a caseworker / support worker. So I work with young adults who have disabilities. Some of them are, you could almost consider them as at-risk youth as well in the Oshawa area. And as the other gentlemen have said, I've gone through, struggles in the past, with depression, with suicidal thoughts, just growing up, learning how to be a man, and I'm very grateful that I've come a long way, and I'm just surrounded by great men, and that's what allows me to continue to stay strong.
Excellent. Thank you, Shaun, and thank you all of you for what you do. It's very important. So let me go straight to Donovan. Donovan, I know that one of the things that I noticed when I first saw your clip, look, I've been through a separation as well, and I could feel some of the angst, the anxiety, the pain, the frustration that you went through in your brief announcement, and I totally identified with it. But you wanted to share your experience. Can you share your experience with us about your marriage and how it ended and how separation affected you? I'm sure a lot of men will be able to relate to it.
I'm not sure, but it's a long story. When I was 25 years old, I got married, and within a year, I got divorced. But I married because I thought this was my angel. She was sent from God. I was wrong. After that, I got engaged. I had a son, and that ended. That was more like a common law marriage, but that ended. And since then, I was broken because I had to leave my son. I had to walk away from my son. So I really and truly didn't know what to do as a man because I had nobody to talk to about it. Because people would tell me, "Don't worry about it. You're gonna get over it. You're a man. Just be a man." So from divorce, separation, my son leaving my life, but here I am, part of a man.
Glad to have you here, man. I'm glad that you were able to work past that because there's no word to describe the pain that instills. Believe me, I know too. I understand. How about yourself, Damien? Do you have a story similar to that?
As far as marriage, not a similar story, to be very honest, but just my upbringing was just dealing with a lot of negativity and just things that were said to me. So just really empowering my mind to overcome like things that, stuff people had said to me that I started to believe, and just really overcoming those things is just really been part of my journey to almost literally reprogram my mind, to be in a better place. So that in that regards, it's just been a real journey for me to, battle with that. So
Gotcha. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I was going to say that I think most of us here were of West Indian background. Is that a fair statement?
yeah, that's fair.
Yes, fun.
Yes. So West Indian parents don't do timeouts, man. We don't do timeouts. It's lashes.
I wish.
It's lashes. So yeah. It wasn't called child abuse when it was called discipline, but it also has lasting effects. It has lasting effects.
Yes.
We grew up in a very I'm making jokes about it because we tend to make jokes about that's how we deal with the pain, but the reality of it is it does affect you later in life, right? So that is important. Denley, how about yourself?
I am blessed that I haven't undergone a particular journey of heartbreak and separation. We're now approaching, in my marriage, about 13 years. And so likewise, the work that it takes to keep a marriage together. We'd be kidding ourselves to say that no marriage goes through its ups and downs. Like we have our ups and downs, but I think that really the key things that when we got together, we made pretty much a commitment that said, we're going to be high water, right? And I think that's really the key thing. And I will say something about for our children. I think one of the best ways to love our children, as men, love your women. Because at the end of the day, when children see parents separate, they always internalize it and think it's their fault.
Yes.
Repercussions. So when they're young, it's time, but when they get older, that really makes the key difference.
It does, and to add just a fine point to that, and that's even more of a difficult journey after separation because there's a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of emotions, but at the end of the day, the kids are half you and they're half her, right? And I learned that there's a lot of pride that you've got to suck up sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's not about her. It's about the children. And Denley, you're right. I mean, even in a situation where it's very the separation is a very antagonistic separation, it's still important to find a place of peace. It may take time. It doesn't happen overnight because it took me a couple of years, but to find a place where you can be at peace with each other, recognize that, listen, we all make mistakes, we all screw up, and we're all human, and time does heal all wounds, believe it or not. That comment about reprogramming your brain, I'm sure a lot of guys are watching this now and you're thinking, okay, well, that's great if you're young, but what if you're older? Well, I went through the same thing. I had to go through the whole reprogramming thing, and I started that at age 41, so I was a little bit older than you guys. And it is possible. It takes time, and the longer, of course, you go program the way that you are, the harder it is to reprogram your brain. A lot of it really is a conscious effort. But like you said, surround yourself with positive people. You call the herd with all the negative people, and that is part of the process, is calling the herd. It can be done. Now, for you guys, this is just a general question. Did you seek counseling or help? Did you find there were any services to provide men with support when you originally started looking before you found Denley, your program, and Heart of a Man for Donovan and you guys?
Yeah, one of the challenges that we had when we just first got married, my wife Deja and I, we had someone that in our marriage, and me being very naive in terms of being young, kind of looked at someone and said, no, they don't have that malicious intent. There's no way that that person would actually do that. It's and of course you learn that women pick up cues from other women when they know that they're encroaching on this space. So when we got that particular challenge, I was looking to support within my local church. Didn't really get the support that we needed at the time. They provoked me, among other things, and let's face it, sometime in our West Indian churches, and sometimes Black churches, like those sort of challenges within marital challenges, that's sometimes the pastors or the elders or the leaders within don't really know how to navigate that, especially when you have someone that's a congregation. So I had to start to seek to, and first of all, it led me to stumble upon the group Warriors, which is a men's group, which I had the opportunity to take on now as a pastor among about 10 men. Been with the group about, but at the time when I got there, I was someone on a journey looking for men that can support and encourage me. And in that group, there was a man there that my heart and the godfather to my son, who had a counseling background, that I eventually had the courage to say, let's talk to him. And of course, you have your wife say, we need to talk to somebody. We need to talk to someone. I think one of the challenges in any relationship, I would say, is so much counseling, but just look at it as coaching. Like any good team, if you see your partner, your spouse, see them really as a team unit, and that you need a coach. And I think that mentality really, when I had that mentality, talking about reprogramming, that was the key piece. It's like, see this as coaching, see this as no different than you bring your car into the shop and you look at how to maintain it in our relationship, as opposed to saying that it's broken and we need to fix it. Let's find out how we can improve on it and move it to the next level. And so that gentleman was there, that was instrumental, and the group has been one of the ways that we can deal with these hard issues.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that, Denley. Damien, how about yourself? Were you able to easily find support from men?
To be very honest, at my nature, I've just been very private. So it would take so much to get to a point where I would open up. It would almost have to be catastrophic or disastrous before I would open up. And but just with Heart of a Man, it just made it an easier transition for me to actually start doing counseling. And it wasn't like, specific for men, the counseling that I was doing, but what happened was, because I was able to be vulnerable and to open up, it just opened another avenue to let me know as a man, like when I share my heart or, express things, that it's not weak, and, like as men, we find that if we share that, I'm going through a situation, or, my heart's broken, it almost feels like an embarrassing thing, like to be like, my girl just broke up with me and I'm hurt. Most guys would just give a quick answer.
Yes.
And then change the topic.
Yeah, exactly, because they don't know how to deal with that. So with Heart of a Man, it's been good in the sense that I could open up with not only them, but it helps me even to open up in counseling as well. So it's definitely a double-edged transition. So that's what's really helped me.
Excellent. Thanks, Damien. Donovan, how about yourself?
my story's a long book. I don't know if we could do this, but since I was 21, I was diagnosed with depression. But I grew up in a community that taught me I got to keep that quiet. I got to be strong. I got to be a man. I can't be sensitive. And I was under the impression that I can't talk about it, which built a lot of suicidal thoughts, a lot of insecurity. I felt broken, but because I was 6'4", some tall guy, I had to put on a show. So what I did when I became a father, I started realizing I had some really deep things in my heart that was broken. So I got help. And that helped change my life, which led me to start talking about Heart of a Man. Because a lot of the things I felt was in my heart, and I had to express that. And as men, if we learn to express things from our heart, we're not weak, we're strong. And actually what we're doing, we're just providing each other medicine by talking and encouraging each other. So that's what I did. I had to get the counseling. I had to go see a psychologist. I even listened to things on YouTube just to empower me. That's my story.
Well, thanks for sharing your story, Donovan. I think it's a common theme for men in general. I was having a conversation the other day with a friend of mine. I was talking about Dr. Warren Farrell, who is very big on men's issues. He's written a number of books. And there's one study he did which talked about why men don't talk, why men keep bottling these issues up. And he did a study with, he had a room full of toddlers, boys and girls, and their parents were in the room, and they let the kids play. And he watched what the parents would do when the kids would cry. So when a little girl would cry, what would the parents do?
They would say, cry, you'll be okay. Oh, poor baby.
Right? And they'd pick her up.
Yeah.
Right? When the little boy cried, what'd they do?
Nope.
They let him cry. They let him cry for a little bit.
Let him cry.
Then they picked him up. And so the point I'm making is that sends a message to children at a very early age, particularly to boys. Your pain is not, you need to learn to deal with it. We don't want to hear about your pain. And so, eventually they pick the boys up, but they let them cry for a little bit. Just, let's see if he can figure it out for himself. The message that it sends to men at a very early age is to keep it yourself, to not talk about it. And so what happens, of course, when we become men, we've had no practice converting or translating a feeling or an emotion to words. We don't have the words for it. So women commonly hear guys say, no, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk to you about it. I don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we don't know how to express it. We don't know how to say what we're feeling. We've never had any practice because we've been told, deal with it. But yeah, so men learn that from early on. And what happens is we don't really realize that we don't have the dialogue or the language express emotion. And we also notice that when you express emotion, men tend to get very uncomfortable, say, whoa, okay, man, let's go, how about those Blue Jays, And and with women, when you express your emotions, at first women typically say, I want a man who's sensitive, but not too sensitive.
Yeah, Shaun, I don't know if I definitely wanted to chime in on what you just said.
Please,
there.
go ahead.
It's so true. Because I know with my little guy, he's the middle child. So I have 3 children. My daughter, my last son, Mateo, and Micah, he's definitely empathetic. So much so that, he feels quite deeply, very emotional, has a range of sensitivity that really catches me off guard because that's not my particular love language or particular personality bent. And one of the things that I learned in being part of the group, of being vulnerable, of being able to open up, that it allowed me to see my son in a light that I want to be able to allow him to express himself, that I may not have the opportunity. So I am a lot more sensitive not to shut that down when he feels that he needs to cry, he needs to express himself. A lot more I'm more likely to hold him and say, it's okay, buddy. Share what you're feeling about it, as opposed to saying, man up, you don't need to cry about these things. Because I recognize that's who he is. And I really honestly believe that sometimes we misinterpret men who have that emotional tendency to say that, they're strange. And guess what? when they don't have a framework to interpret that particular emotional side of them, of course they're going to either be alienated or they're going to feel that they're less of a man.
You said it.
And I think that having that ability to say, you know what, that's the whole full range of manhood, and you're allowed to cry, you're allowed to express yourself as a youth. But when I tell my son, okay, when you finish crying, I want you to find the words, let's put the vocabulary together so you're able to express yourself. And I think TD Jakes hit the nail on the head that women, young girls get to practice that from a young age. We don't. And so we suffer for it when we become adults, and we suffer in silence very much so.
Exactly. From very early on, girls learn to express what hurts, why they're sad, all this, all those different emotions. They've learned the language. They've learned to translate that into words. And I think what frustrates women is that we don't have that language yet. We're still, at our age, grown men, learning that language, and it's not easy to learn.
I'll be honest. What you just said, Denley, it's correct, because I was taught not to cry as a man. I was called the P word. I don't want to,
Yeah.
It was called the P word. And there's a word in Jamaican terminology called fussy. And I was called, I was very angry, but I was very soft at the same time. Right? And in my family, a lot of people cried, but you had to keep it to yourself. And even my friends, I felt like if I expressed my emotions, they'd feel awkward. If I felt like crying. And what I did with my son when I just had my son was I brought that into him. Why are you crying? In the beginning, when he was 1 year old, now he's 8. I love when he cries. I feel empowered when he cries because I get to hug him. I get to talk to him. So then what you said is actually really powerful, man. That's what men need to do now. We need to get away from what society told us, from even what family told us. So I'm very happy about this.
We all grew up with that kind of training where our parents said, what you crying about? Stop crying before I give you something to cry about, right?
Yeah.
We've all heard that one, right? We've all heard that one. So it takes some training to not use that on our own children, right?
That's very true. Very true.
It does take some training. Denley, when did you become aware that there were other men going through the same things that you were going through?
You know what? I think it really hit me when we lost our first child due to a miscarriage. And Caleb, when we lost him, and Sanjay was going through a period where I did not know as a man how to reach out. There was no platform for that. It's bad enough that there's no miscarriage is very much taboo, but at least women can find groups that can talk about it, but men absolutely not. And it dawned on me as one of the ways to kind of create that own personal therapy was to say, I want to talk about it. And when my wife felt comfortable about it, I was part of my Toastmasters group. I got up and I said I was going to share about how we lost Caleb and how we were making that transition. No kidding, Shaun and men. After I finished making that speech, talking about that situation, the amount of men that came up to me and said, you know what, yeah, buddy, I lost mine too. I don't know what to deal with it. Yeah, we're still trying. This is like the 5th time, 6th time we've lost so many. We don't know what to do. That's when it really hit me that there is no platform for men to be vulnerable. And we grieve for the loss of our child, but we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to express that. And once you bring it up, men obviously put that down. We don't know how to go back and really embrace our wife to say we're going to get through it, because we ourselves, we don't know what to do.
Yeah, and by the way, Mike, my condolences to you. That is not an easy thing to go through. It is a very difficult thing to go through. And, the experience that I had is very similar to yours in terms of when you finally find the courage to speak up, it shocks you how many men in your immediate circle are living very similar situations as you are, but just didn't have the strength or the courage to say anything about it. They were keeping quiet, like I was. How about yourself, Damian? So when did you become aware that there were other men going through the same things that you were going through?
There's just different instances. I found that when I shared my story, and when people would come up to me after and ask me questions about it, I found that yeah, people were able to relate in that sense. And just even with what we've been doing lately, we've been just giving out bracelets that say pain, passion, purpose on them. And the amount of men that I've encountered who have talked about like suicidal attempts, or people they known who have gone through a struggle, and just really thanking me for just even when I share part of my story, that it really was an eye opener to make me realize that I'm not the only one. Like literally, as I open my mouth, and I show men that I'm struggling. There's been literally other men who feel like that's almost like an icebreaker, almost like they feel like, okay, well, this guy is able to share, so can I. So in that way, I really once I've shared, it's just been like an opening door for another man to feel like, okay, he's done it, then I can do it too. So that's where I found it was very helpful for men.
Yeah, that's like almost like I found the same thing too. It's like opening the floodgates. Once you're in a setting with guys that you're in your circle of trust, once you start sharing, the floodgates open up, and a lot more comes out than you expected you were going to hear. When did you become aware that there are other men going through the same things you're going through? Now, it sounds to me like we've all kind of discovered it by, we blurted something out once with some other guys and discovered that they were cool with it, and then they had responses too. They had feedback too. So was that your experience as well?
That's a great question. My experience happened with Bishop T.D. Jakes. I was suffering from a lot, and I felt alone. So I'm not sure if you guys ever heard of Emotions.
Yeah.
He had a seminar called Emotions, and I listened to that when I was about 26 years old. And it shocked me and allowed me to understand that other men are going through the same thing. So I felt the connection. I felt more open to talk about it, but still didn't talk about it back then. But that's something that led me to realize that other men are suffering from the same things I'm going through. And taught to keep it quiet. Don't talk about it. You know what I mean? Man up, be strong. But the pain we feel in our heart is overwhelming. And I think people need to know that we feel a lot in our hearts. So I thank God that I heard that message from Bishop T.D. Jakes, and talk about the pain we feel as men, because it's hard, man. So that's what caught my attention. Emotions from Bishop T.D. Jakes.
I've often heard, I'm sure you guys have probably heard some variation of this as well, from women that some women I've met that men don't show their emotions, they're too hard, they're not sensitive. And I think what happens is that's all an exterior thing, because we've been trained not to be sensitive. I mean, let's face it, if you're in a cabin with your wife and the two kids and there's rustling in the bushes, who's going to take the shotgun and go out front, and who's taking the kids in the basement? It's not even a conversation, right?
Yeah.
So we learn to take the emotions, because look, we get scared too. I'm not bulletproof, but someone's got to do it, and we learn to push that emotion deep down, and go stand in the front of the house. But that takes wiring over years and years and years, and once you're wired that way, it's hard to just turn it on and turn it off. It's not a switch you turn on and turn off, right? The emotions exist; they're buried down there. I mean, when you look at these clips with somebody falls on the subway tracks, 9 times out of 10, the person that jumps in to save them is a guy.
Yeah.
Complete and total stranger. He jumps in, drags them out. If it's a woman and her children or whatever, he jumps in and drags them out. Puts his life in danger. He could be a father of 3 kids at home, right? You have to have some deep emotions and passion to be that person. You can't be indifferent and say, oh, well, she fell down, well, there's 7 billion people in the world, there's 2 left, No one's going to say that, right? Donovan, tell us, how did Heart of a Man formally become into being? How did it formally, and when did it formally come into being?
Well, you just said it, the passion. having a passion for something like that. Like, Heart of a Man started in 2015 because I wanted to redefine manhood because of all those things, like the things we have to keep inside of our hearts. So actually, I listened to a message from Bishop T.D. Jakes, and I was wondering how I can get this. I wonder how I could spread this message out there. So I created a T-shirt called "HOAM," Heart of a Man. But also, what I did was I had men's groups, and men had to come and speak from their hearts. We could talk about anything, but we just have to be open and support each other. No name calling, just total respect between all of us. And that's how Heart of a Man grew. We just took time. We learned what men needed, and what we're doing right now is redefining masculinity, manhood, and changing society's view on manhood. And that's why I'm so thankful that Global News was able to air what we're trying to do. It's not about money, because first, I thought I could just come up with something to make $1 million. But that's not true passion. That's why I call it Heart of a Man, pain, passion, purpose, because that's what it takes in your heart. So that's how Heart of a Man came about, to really redefine manhood and form men's support groups and create a T-shirt men can wear to feel on top of the world.
Now, tell me, Donovan, when it became aware to other people that you had a men's support group, I'm sure you had a lot of people who thought that was a great idea. Did you have any detractors saying, "Well, what do men need men's groups for? We need more women's groups"? You know, did you hear any of that?
Yes, I did. I got that. I got that quite often. I felt like I was to quit almost every day. I'm like, what am I doing? I can't do this. Men don't want this. This is not masculinity. So I felt afraid, and I heard that quite often. Like, men don't share their hearts. That's not what you should be doing. Say something. Call it something else. Call it. And first, I called it hard work, dedication, because men want to be like, yeah, hard work, dedication. No. So I just kept on praying to God and just allowing my heart to show me that men need to speak from their hearts. So, but I heard a lot of people saying you should not do that.
Did you
You're
hear?
Not going to do anything.
Did you hear? Well, why can't you make it about men and women?
Every day.
Every day.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I heard a lot of women say, what about Heart of a Woman? Anytime I would spread the message about Heart of a Man, women would say, what about Heart of a Woman? And I respected that, because women have hearts, but they can share it and cry. Men have hearts, but we got to be like this, right? What if in fact, here's something I was going to ask you guys. For example, like when we share our vulnerability with women, sometimes we come off as soft, right? So Heart of a Man was empowering men to speak from their heart, so women would not be able to say, that's soft, that's weak. So Heart of a Man, and I do respect Heart of Women, but we're going to stick to HOAM, Heart of a Man.
And I think it's important. The reason I had that trigger warning at the beginning of the show wasn't to be facetious, but there are things that women don't say when there are men around. There are things that men don't say when women are around, right? So you're not going to open up your heart completely if there's women in the room. We're just not going to do it. So That's the reason, in my opinion. I mean, I wouldn't say I have a formal support group, but I have a couple of guys. We form this circle of trust that we call it, and we have discussions about things that affect us that we keep within our circle, and the women don't hear about it because it's about us. It's not about them. I know it sounds unfortunate that it's not about them, but sometimes it isn't about you, and sometimes it's about us. And some people get rubbed the wrong way when they hear that. Some people think it's a great idea. It could go either way.
Just what Donovan just said there is as you said, Shaun, in terms of our inability to express ourselves. I do think sometimes many women actually don't know that they're doing more damage than good, because you do have some men who actually do want to open up. So the grunts and the moans, which some women perceive as, oh, he doesn't want to open up. Actually, that is the beginning of him opening up. So at that point, that's at the cusp where you need to say, come on, I'm working with you, honey. Baby, I'm understanding where you're going. I know you're trying, but it's interpreted as, oh, you don't want to talk to me. Why? What's going on? You need to speak some more. It could be true that, oh, why are you feeling this way? You need to man up. So both responses are really detrimental in the process of a man trying to open up, going through that journey. So women actually need to understand how men are processing that to get it out of them. See, men are brave. We would go to Kuwait, we would go to Iraq, we would go to places around the world to go fight a war. Yeah. But when it comes to opening up our hearts, guess what? It takes more courage to do that, because you know what? Just like Samson, you know my weakness. And if I open up my heart, guess what? You may blind me just the same way that Samson was blinded. So that's one of the challenges that I find as men, is that women do not appreciate that we're actually are trying, but they're shooting us down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, to add to that point, Denley, I know oftentimes you'll be in a discussion with your lady friend, and you start talking about something that bothers you, and almost immediately it becomes the contest of who's hurting more. Well, you think that hurts you, well, then it goes back to me, right? What ends up happening, what that basically says to the guy is, I don't really want to hear what you have to say, even if I'm saying that I want to hear it. And so what happens is, to your point, we stumble, we fumble for the words, we make moan, make grunt. We don't have an eloquent way sometimes to articulate what's bothering us. So sometimes for women, this doesn't sound tough. Sometimes be quiet and just let them talk. And don't make it the contest about, okay, well, my pain is worse than your pain. For a minute, for an instant, this is actually just about him. I have no doubts of the 5 men on here, myself included, that when it's time to be about her, we can sit quiet and listen, because we do it all the time anyway, right? So we're already wired to know to stop talking, let her talk. Well, that's going to be a two-way street. Sometimes she needs to shut down, stop the urge to want to correct or to say, well, that's not true, or to be defensive. Just let him talk. Just let him get it out of his system.
I just remember the story of the vulnerability author, Brene Brown.
Brene Brown, yeah.
Yeah, so when there was one instant where the husband came up to her after she was sharing about vulnerability at the point where she wasn't even talking to men, and he said that they would rather see him fall off the white horse before they would see him. They would want to see him as weak.
Wow.
So it's like, in that light of being a man, like when we're vulnerable or we share our hearts, like it's almost like the unsaid stigma behind it. Like they say they want to see it, but really and truly they don't. So I just really, when I heard that story, I said that's the problem, because you're asking for vulnerability, but when it shows up, you don't know how to handle it, and it becomes like, a thing where they don't know what to say or how to handle it, even though they've requested it. And that's why I think things like this, where we're able to discuss it, is so powerful, because it really gives us the outlet to say, like, I'm weak right now. I don't even know if I have anything left, to fight or to go to war, because like as men, we just really, and I really believe that's why a lot of men just, commit suicide or get depressed, because they're so burnt out of trying to be strong when your heart is broken, and you're dying inside, and and you're not able to be vulnerable, even though people are saying it's okay, but actions speak louder than words.
They do. I mean, one thing I was mentioning to you guys before we're live on the show. There was I was reading this book about 6-7 months ago called "The Myth of Male Power." I've mentioned it on a few other shows before this, written by Dr. Warren Farrell, and he made this one statement that stunned me, and it stunned me to the point where it brought everything into focus. And he basically says, if our very survival has been dependent on our son's willingness to die, being sensitive to male death competes with our survival instinct. So what that basically says is, when you have a conversation about something happens to a woman gets shot, a woman gets killed, there is an emotional reaction. We all have an emotional reaction to that. We get defensive. We think about our mothers, we think about our wives, our daughters, and so on. When we talk about the same situation with men, it becomes an intellectual, cerebral conversation. It is devoid of emotion. And it's devoid of emotion because when we start to feel sensitivity about men, it competes with our survival instinct because men are there to protect us. If I feel too much compassion for you, it would destroy me if something happened to you. I have to be ready to move on to the next man to look, to join my family, look after my family, and I have to be able to detach from you emotionally to reattach with him.
That's. I just want to say something. That's actually really strong because what you're saying is completely true. That's what I believe. That's just what I believe. But what he was saying earlier regarding men, talking to men and being connected, I'm not sure if it was Denley that said it, but what I found with my friends and in the past, when we talked in front of each other, we had to be strong. I can't say, yo, I feel like crying, man. My heart's hurting me right now. I feel broken. But when I got in front of a woman, a friend, maybe a woman I was dating, I'll get a hug, I'll cuddle. So what's the difference between men talking to men in a group other than this? You're going out with your friends and you're saying, yeah, I'm good. I'm the man. I'm strong. I'm all right. Everything's good. Why do we have to do that? But instead, we go in front of women, we tell them exactly what we feel inside of our hearts, and we open up. Why do we do that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I could relate to that, like in so many ways, just by experiences before. I remember when my parents got separated, I was like, around some of my boys, and I love them to death. We're a lot older now, but I remember at that time, I just wanted to bawl and cry. I was just like, because they had no idea my parents separated. I was telling them, and I didn't tell anybody else. But when we all got together, everyone was just cracking jokes and, talking trash to each other. But I just wanted to cry and bawl my eyes out. But I had to hold it in. And when I left, I walked home and basically cried because it was too much. I didn't have the support.
Wow.
Didn't have support. It was, I can remember, remember that vividly. It was brutal, and I think a lot of men go through that.
When you think about men and the challenges that we go through in dealing with, say, infidelity, that's probably one of the reasons infidelity is probably high with a lot of black men, because of the fact that we don't talk about the pain that we're going through with the significant other in our lives. We go reach out to the other woman. We cry on their shoulder, and say, hey, why am I not with you instead of with her? We cannot go to our boys to say, I'm hurting, because they can't process that. So this perpetuation of that cycle, because we don't have men that says, you know what, I understand your pain, I understand your plight. Now you're empowered, go back and fix that relationship, work on it, as opposed to pressing the exit button and jettison from that relationship. So I do think because of our lack of ability, our lack of emotional acuity or capacity to help our fellow brothers, has also contributed to our men being very much unfaithful.
Like, before I started Heart of a Man, it was very hard for me to be sensitive because I would get called soft and what's wrong with you? If I divulged some information to a woman and told her I would open up to her, I get called soft, I get called the B word and sensitive, too sensitive. I got called out my whole entire life. I was too sensitive because I always wanted to open my heart. My mother passed away of cancer, and she was the woman I could open my heart to, and it's tough. It's tough. I'm just that's why I had to start something called Heart of a Man, so man could hear that word, heart, your heart. It's powerful. You get these things in your heart, it's powerful. It could change a lot of people's view on things. So, and Denley, thanks for bringing that up, and really and truly, that's powerful.
Thanks, Donovan. Now I know we're all black men on this call here, but I understand that for Heart of a Man is not specific just to black men. It's for men, generally speaking. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. It is. It's. I mean, everybody has a heart. If I'm white, if I'm black, if I'm Indian or Oriental, whatever, I still have a heart. I'm a human being. So, I mean, I target all men. I fight for black men. I'm a black man, But, yeah, for all men, we all have a heart. we're different, we're different skin colors, we're different backgrounds, but we have a heart. Yeah, so that's why I target all men.
In my experience, I've had these types of conversations with men of all color, and at the end of the day, we all live with the same social contract, the same expectations of us, regardless of what our color is. So men tend to relate on these issues directly. Now, so how do people join your group? How do people become aware of Heart of a Man? And what do they need to do if they want to become part of your group? And also, do they have to be local to the Toronto, Canada area, or do you have something more virtual available?
Well, I have social media. For example, Instagram, Facebook, even Twitter. They reach out to me on that. If you're from Japan or you're from Russia, you want to come and visit, we have monthly men's groups. You can send me an email and reach out to me. Most definitely, just trying to enlarge, so men from all over the world can eventually come to Canada. But I'm going to be possibly moving to the United States with Heart of a Man, to be honest. But yeah, you can go on Facebook, Instagram, Heart of a Man _, hashtag Heart of a Man _, and my Twitter is The Heart of a Man.
Okay, and I'll include all the links in the low bar for anybody who wants to go ahead and check it out. And Denley, how about yourself? If people want to participate in your group, how does that work? How do they join?
Yeah, I'll tell the truth. Not to say our group is a closed group. We have been very selective in the sense that we didn't actively market the group because we recognize the quality was more important than the quantity. However, if we felt that the person's in the stage of their life that they need that sort of camaraderie, then the group is most definitely opened up. I will say something a little more specific that deal with a lot of Black male issues as a Canadian, as a Christian on top of that, those particular multi-layer identities, how to navigate those waters in a Canadian context, being Black and having a person of faith. So our group tend to kind of really move in that direction because that's really needed, because all the books that are written are either for male Christians in the States or Black Christians in the States. And so there's nothing really dealing with men of faith who are of color living in the Canadian context. So I'm very contextual in that way. However, if someone needs to hit me up in terms of counseling, in terms of really navigating the waters within the relationship, I am open to everyone. So I've dealt with Polish gentlemen who are in their 60s in terms of counseling them, dealing with Asians. And so I think that my reach is pretty ubiquitous. But in terms of our group, in terms of the Warriors, we are definitely a specific focus of how to navigate the water as Black men of faith within the Canadian context. And so if you want to reach me, you can definitely reach me at Denley Mcintosh at WordPress.com or denley@hotmail.com or look for me on Facebook.
Okay, and I'll include those links also in the low bar for anybody. There are instances, I imagine, where you come across somebody who you get the sense that's on the verge of suicide, is really close to that. Have you guys come across that? And if you have, do you somehow try to refer them to suicide prevention? Like, how do you handle that type of situation? Because that's where it gets a little bit, the ground gets a little bit shaky.
Ooh, to be very honest, I think Donovan would be more suitable to answer that. I haven't encountered that many. As far as like on that level of men of wanting to commit suicide at that time, I've encountered men who have mentioned it, or even different people who have lost somebody to suicide, but I've never encountered that that intensely somebody in that moment, and I would definitely recommend some, prevention center, but I'll let Donovan speak on that, to be honest.
Well, thank you, sir. That's why I do call it Heart of a Man, because really and truly, when it comes to suicide, we face a lot of pain in our hearts at times. And we don't know who to talk to. And I faced suicide, I faced depression, but when you listen to someone, if you have a friend like them, if you and I were best friends, I would want you all to listen to what I have to say instead of telling me what to do. Don't tell me, yo, you're strong, you're a man, you're masculine, you can't do that. Tell me, just listen to me. Because the first thing you can do, if you listen to someone, you can listen to them and they'll feel like, wow, he's listening to me. The second thing you could do is just give them support, give them a hug. And men say, if you give me a hug, oh, you're soft, you're a wimp. No, give them a tight hug. Let them know they're worth something special in this world. And we got to connect our hearts. I mean, having a group is powerful. That's empowering because you're helping Black men. And I'll be very honest with you, growing up in the West Indian community, a lot of names when I cried, if I expressed myself openly. So we have to listen, we have to show them support, and we have to give them hugs, and we have to just, if they want us to go along with them to a support group, go with them, stay by their sides. Reach out to different people for them. You just got to encourage them, empower them, and let them know they're not alone.
Right.
That's what I've learned.
You know, and I think on that note, I think what's important for anybody who's listening and watching this, and this includes women who are in relationships with men, that I think one of the most important thing a man needs to know from you is he needs to know that you've got his back. If he feels like you've got his back, he will go to the ends of the earth to do whatever he needs to do for you. But if there's any question in his mind that you don't really have his back, or you'll bail on a moment's notice, he's not going to open up to you. And that's probably a clear sign that things aren't good, and there's an opportunity for you to start talking to him and really save your relationship if you find that things just aren't, communication isn't happening.
The key thing, is definitely listening to them. Making sure you're available, and just showing no judgment whatsoever. Because I remember when I was in my suicidal state, I remember just turning completely mute at times, not saying anything. And I remember when I was hanging out with some friends, my friend Rachel at the time gave me a hug. And that was love right there. That's literally all I needed.
That probably saved your life.
He hugged me, saved my life. Literally, I would say, yeah. I just remember just lying on the couch, just mute, and she gave me a hug. Like, she asked me, are you okay? And I didn't say anything. She just hugged me right there. And to move on the next day, you know what I mean? So definitely that's just speaking from experience, and listening is the first thing. And if it comes down to directing them to suicide prevention, there is a contact number that they can call. That's also a tool to use as well.
I mentioned at the top of the show that 4 out of 5 suicides are committed by men. Now, women attempt suicide more often than men do. Men just finish the job.
The hug that Shaun talked about that really gave him his sense of identity back, that sense of esteem, and Donovan talking about really being embraced. One of the experiments that we can do as men and see how true that men don't like to be vulnerable, or even like to be touched, is that when men approach each other by a hand first, right? The handshake, and then we do the half hug. But I would challenge us that men that we know need that compassion, need that care, and you'll see how shocked they are. Because one, it's like, oh my gosh, I needed that, but I don't know if I want that.
And I would never ask for it.
Yeah, but at that moment, it's like, wow, this feels good. In the right sense of the term, right? So, especially if your love language is touch, based on Dr. Gary Chapman, for that man, know that you touch them. I meant sports because they look for that touch on the sport field, and they look for that hug on the sports field. Because, outside the sports field, there's no rules that tell them how to get that touch, and so. The rules, what? I know you need this. I'm gonna hug you tight and just say, you know what?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing as well, that you know, I really, you know, when we get the hugs, when we get the support, that is, you know, phenomenal. But sometimes, you know, you do have to be there on your own, you know, and you know, that's when the thoughts really attack you, when you're by yourself, you know. Like, it's amazing when we have the support, um, but I just want to say, like, from myself, from the bottom of my heart, that, you know, as men, to know that you are, you know, you're valuable just the way you are, with all the struggles, everything you go through, where you're at in your life, that just because of who you are, like, that is good enough. And sometimes we don't hear that. And you know, when we're by ourselves, we just feel like we've failed in life, or, you know, we haven't, you know, reached the plateau, or we've let our family down. But, like, I really believe with all my heart that, you know, I know for myself personally, that when I started to really sense my own worth, that's what made life a lot more easier, even in the midst of my struggles. That, because sometimes, as much as we want the support and, you know, the understanding, some people just, you know, can't be there for you at that level, you know. And I'm not diminishing anything that's been said, but really, you know, from the inside out, you know, just knowing our own worth at times as well is, I think, very critical. So I just wanted to share that as well.
Thanks, Damon. That's a very core part of all of this. Um, Guys, we're gonna get ready to wrap up pretty soon, but I know, Donovan, you had some statistics you wanted to share with us, so I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll let you go with it.
Well, my stats I found out is that 80% of men, 80% of men are the ones that commit suicide. 80% of people are men that commit suicide. And men are 4 times more likely to die from suicide than women. Women try to commit suicide, but a lot of times they have a better chance of staying alive. What it's showing is men will get a gun and make sure they stay quiet and they commit suicide. The suicide rate is growing and growing and growing. What's happening now, I see a lot of groups opening up. So we just have to take a look at these stats and find a way how we can all get together as men to support that. Because I've struggled with those thoughts since I'm 35 now, since I was 21 years old. And, you know, I walk around, people might think I'm a normal guy, you know, but I struggle with some deep pain as a man in my heart, you know. So 80% are men that try to commit suicide.
Yeah, and on top of that, to your point, when you mentioned earlier, women attempt it more often. Oftentimes, women attempt suicide as a cry for help.
Yes.
When men
Yes.
attempt suicide, it's not a cry for help. They're trying to stop the pain. It's
They
a
want
different.
to go.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's what it shows. It shows that, and it's tough, and that's why I started Heart of a Man, and I just want this mission to grow, and I'm just, this is a blessing, actually. It's a complete blessing. So I hope people take these stats into their heart, understand what's going on.
And, you know, we all have, you know, brothers, fathers, uncles, sons. Be aware that they're human too, and they have pain. They may not say it. They may act stoic, but that's because we're trained by society to behave that way. That's what's expected of. Denley, what's next for you guys? What's your ultimate goal with your group, your organization?
The ultimate goal is to continue to build the camaraderie and the fellowship among us, that we would go deeper and identify with each other's life in terms of really message, voice through each other, that we may go out and reach one, teach one, so to speak. We love to see that the group grows and people join on. I know that it will always be a good thing. I know it's always see the that's large, but I think from my standpoint, as I really want to see the things that I learned from a theological standpoint, philosophical standpoint, and contextualize it within our Canadian Afro-Caribbean framework. And so a lot more of those cutting-edge research, innovative things that, and I think our group is really being a trailblazer in those sort of conversations that hopefully we'll be able to multiply with other and people like Donovan be able to have those sort of exchanges and be able to bring those exchanges down to the U.S. as well.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. And one question for you really quickly. So is the guys that participate in your group, it's primarily a, from a religious standpoint, it's primarily Christian-based. Is that a fair statement?
I would say that they're primarily Christian men, but we do talk about subjects that apply to Black men in general, men in more general. So we do have people who aren't necessarily of the faith, but we kind of have an agreement that we will talk about issues because they're relevant to you, but we will talk from a particular faith lens.
Okay, thank you.
And so we definitely let people know.
Okay, and Donovan, same question for you. Is your group, is it a faith-based group? Is it faith agnostic? How does it typically work?
Well, my group is almost like Jesus going to the disciples and helping different people. They didn't know him, but he opened their hearts. So my group is going to be a group of men all over that I'm reaching out to. They need to know that I do love Jesus. Jesus does love me. I want them to hear this, but I want to really impact and empower men's hearts to see what they're worth and really help with them struggling with the things such as depression, suicide, abuse, mental health issues, things like that. I want to touch on those topics. I want us to open up and talk about it and bring men together. That's why I created a t-shirt also called HOAM, so we can wear it not to get rich, but to feel like we're a team.
And I want to make certain we also include the links in the low bar to promote your shirt in case anybody wants to get the shirts and any other materials that you have. So what's next for Heart of a Man? What's your ultimate goal?
My goal is just to keep on creating the groups and having monthly groups for men. We're going to be, Damian and I, and hopefully some other friends, will do some traveling, and we're going to be on some radio stations talking more about Heart of a Man and just spreading the message. That's my goal, asking God to allow me to spread the message openly and really reaching out and touching men's hearts.
All I can say is God bless you. You know, this is for those of us who are Christians, you're doing God's will, you know. So, you know, bless you for doing that. I was impressed the moment I saw that the news clip on Global News, and I said, I have got to meet this guy. So, Denley, thank you very much for making us aware of Donovan and Damian and Shaun and their group, and also for what you do. What you guys do is, regardless of how many groups there are, what you're doing, the most important thing is you're helping men who need support, and that's the crux of it all. That's what really matters.
Yeah, well, I don't have too many last words, but all I can say is just for men out there who are listening, just as Donovan said, just open your heart, just don't hold back anymore. I mean, there's no point in being quiet. You know, just open your heart and just reach out. That's all I can say.
Yep. And those who listen are really your friends, and those who have nothing but bad things to say, you know, you have to start culling the herd someplace, and maybe that's where you start. I don't know. If you enjoyed the show and want to see more, join our public Facebook group called The Man Cave by Gentlemen United. All of our shows, tons of additional content, and invitations to future shows are posted there. You can add to the conversation and suggest future discussion topics you'd like to see us tackle. Please like, comment, share, and most of all, subscribe by clicking the Gentlemen United icon right here. If you want to see more, click here. Thanks again for joining Gentlemen United in the Man Cave.
Enjoyed the show? Like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for joining us in the Man Cave.